Not closing the sale doesn't mean you need a better script. It means the buyer never believed that you were sold on what you were selling in the first place. We're taught to treat the close like this final step, this final destination. It's a moment to perform and to persuade and to prove. That's not what the close is. The close isn't an event. It's actually an extension of the process of creating certainty that you have to build throughout the entire sales conversation. Again, sales at its highest level is the transference of emotion. And the primary emotion in sales is certainty. Every single time that you hesitate at the end, every time you try to make this big shift to now going into the grand finale, what you do is you create a gap that gets filled with doubt and confusion. You make the buyer question what felt really clear. You make them wonder, why all of a sudden is this person's energy shifting? Why are they now all of a sudden sitting up and changing their physiology? When you do this, that gap collapses your authority and you train yourself to play small. You train yourself to think that everything's riding on this last piece, and if you don't do this right, then you've blown the deal. The truth is that you may have blown the deal in the first 5 seconds and didn't even know it in the first place. That's why this isn't a script problem. It's a self-concept problem. It's how you see yourself, and it's the understanding of yourself that we're going to fix, and we're going to fix it in this video. See, if you're not closing, it's because you're not sold. It's because you haven't bought in. See, the internal sale, the sale that you have to make to yourself, always comes before an external sale. See, there's 2 sales that have to be made. First, you have to buy into yourself. You have to buy into your product. You have to buy into the company. You have to buy into the offer. That's where you have to build certainty, emotional certainty, and logical certainty in yourself. And then you transfer that to the client for the second sale. If you're asking your buyer to believe in something that you haven't sold yourself on, what you're doing is you're creating a level of disconnect that they can feel. And I'm sorry, there is no script and no amount of training that me or anybody else can do to overcome that. Emotional certainty isn't built in the close. That's not when emotional certainty comes to play. Emotional certainty is revealed in the first 4 seconds. It has to be present throughout the entire sales conversation. See, everything you say and everything you do in the sales process either moves people into certainty or moves them away from certainty. And most people unconsciously ask for permission or approval during the close, which really signals to the buyer that they aren't even convinced. Buyers don't buy offers. Buyers don't buy offers. What they do is they buy belief. They're buying solutions. They're buying the certainty that you have a solution. And when your certainty, when your belief, when your understanding of the value that you bring, when that's fragile or when it's forced, when it's robotic, it creates this subtle resistance that stalls the sale. And until you learn to lead with this level of internal conviction, you keep chasing confidence through tactics instead of transmitting it through your very presence. When you walk into the room, when they see you, when they hear you on the phone, when they read the first 3 or 4 lines of your email or the first 5 words of your text, they should feel your authority. See, the buyer feels what you don't say. You are always communicating. You're always communicating, especially when you think that you're not communicating. Every hesitation, every tone shift, every kind of emotional dip sends a message to the buyer. Even when your words are right, even when you're saying the script perfectly, if you're not in alignment with the words that you're saying, that's called praxis. Praxis is the integration of what you believe and what you do. And when you communicate with an internal conflict, When you're communicating about value of your product or company, but you question it, when you're communicating the value of the proposition or the value of the ROI, but you don't really believe it, or you've never seen it happen, or you haven't taken the time to talk to clients who've had a fantastic experience, so you don't have 100% certainty. When you're communicating internal conflict, the buyer mirrors it right back to you. Doubt is contagious. See, silence isn't neutral if it's filled with uncertainty. We know and we teach that there's a very powerful tool that happens when you ask a question and you allow that silence to hold. But if that silence isn't filled with uncertainty and authority, it creates a space for the buyer to retreat in doubt. Salespeople who fear being pushy often overcorrect by playing small, which makes them forgettable instead of magnetic. I remember when I first started selling from the stage, when I was a public speaker and I would be speaking to large audiences. In the beginning, I was afraid of losing the audience. I was afraid of offending the audience. I didn't want to come across as pushy. So in an hour-long keynote, I'd wait till the last 3 minutes and say, "Oh, and by the way, I've got a program," and I would ambush the sale. I would play small rather than selling from the minute I started. And when I understood this, when I understood that it wasn't about me being pushy, it was about me being persuasive. It wasn't about me trying to trick people. It was about me influencing people in a decision that they should be making if they truly had the problem that they said they had. See, I think certainty isn't volume. The louder you talk, the more certainty now. It's not even aggression. It's not even going after it. It's emotional congruence. And again, the buyer can feel it when you have it. And they can feel it when you don't. See, you should be leading the sale right from the very beginning. And I'm going to suggest that if you're not leading the sale, you're losing the sale. Every sales conversation is part of a dynamic relationship. And in every single relationship, there's a dynamic that takes place. It's an unspoken rule where one person allows the other person to be what we call the originator, where that person has the authority in that engagement, at least for a short period of time. And so in every sales conversation, when there's that dynamic set up, you want to be the originator. When you don't own the framework of the interaction, when you don't own the position of authority, what you do is you unconsciously defer that power back to the buyer. And what happens is that erodes certainty. Because think about it. What buyer wants to buy from somebody who's not an authority? My family and I, we're doing $1 million renovation in our backyard. It's a big deal. We're building a big summer kitchen. We're building a gym. We're expanding our property by 17 feet in the back. And when I was making that decision, all of the builders had plans. All the builders had, guys who could do the drywall and lay the block and could do all the roof. All of them had that. But there was only one that had the absolute certainty and confidence that no matter what happened, whether the homeowners association or the architectural review board or the township inspectors, there's a million things that could go wrong. But the builder we chose had absolute certainty that no matter what happens, we would adjust and we're going to get you done on time and on budget. See, that closing of that $1 million deal started in those first 4 seconds. It started by them showing up on time. It started by them looking the part. It started by them just having this level of authority in how they carried themselves. And if you fail to establish authority there, if you fail to establish authority right in the beginning, you are chasing it the rest of the deal. And I'm going to tell you, it takes a true pro to get it back. Confident sellers aren't reactive. They're not taking off their game. because of a question that a buyer asks, because of, some objection that comes up. A confident seller, a sales pro that really has this internal congruency, is directive. That means that they guide and they lead with an emotional rhythm in the conversation. They're in control of where the conversation's going. And you know what? Buyers want to follow someone who knows where they're going. I certainly did when my wife Holly and I were making the decision to spend $1 million in our backyard. We didn't want to be in charge. We knew what we wanted, but we didn't want to control the process. We didn't want the responsibility. See, buyers want to follow someone who knows where they're going. If you seem unsure, they hold back. You know what? Thanks so much. Appreciate you coming by. Leave the plans with us. We'll get back to you. And we would get back to them. We're going to get back to you as soon as we find the person who we really want. And we're going to let you know that you don't have the deal. See, the longer you delay expressing confidence through asking questions, the longer you delay in defining the problem, the longer you delay in establishing authority, the more uncertainty you introduce. In that space of time between you're trying to build rapport and you're trying to establish yourself as an authority, that gap is filled with uncertainty, with doubt, and confusion, and it becomes harder and harder in the sales process to get it back. And the image that you hold about yourself is what shows up. In the book Psycho-Cybernetics, Dr. Maxwell Maltz said that we never outperform our own self-concept. We have an image of who we are, of what we believe we're capable, of what we think we're good and unique at. And if you don't have a high opinion of yourself, if you don't really believe that you are the very best, if you don't really believe that person should give you the authority, if internally you think, geez, I hope they buy, I hope they don't see me for the fraud that I am. If you're walking around with imposter syndrome, people feel that. If you see yourself as someone, I'm just not great at closing, that identity will keep proving itself over and over and over again. You can't show up powerfully at the close if you're still shrinking from your own value. The way you see yourself in the close becomes the story you act out every single time you present your offer. If you see yourself weak in closing, trust me, you will come across weak when you present. So to change your close ratio, you have to first change your own internal narrative, the story that you're telling yourself, about who you are when you sell, about your level of certainty and authority. And it's amazing because when I work with salespeople, so few people want to claim that there's an expert. They fail to claim that I'm an expert in what I do. I'm the authority. I'm the go-to person. If we think about it, the close is a transference of power. You're not just asking for a decision. You're actually creating a space for them to make a decision that they should be making. There shouldn't really even be an asking of, do you want to buy this? Great closers don't need to push that way. They create such clarity and such certainty that the decision to buy is an obvious one. I often say, if you've done it right, closing should be an IQ test, right? When you fully believe in the transformation that you offer, when you truly believe that, no matter what comes up, I'm going to help you solve that problem. I'm going to take you from here to there. You stop asking for the sale. And what you do is you start inviting alignment. Closing with power means that you remove your need to be chosen, and you start standing firm in what you know is absolutely certain for the buyer. That it's possible that every single buyer that you meet will see you as the authority figure, that will see you as the expert in what you do. See, I'm not afraid to go into any company. I'm not afraid to sit down with salespeople who've been in the game for years. As a matter of fact, most of our clients are people who've been in the sales game for a long, long time. And what they're doing is they're looking for that one edge. They're looking for that one idea. And I'm absolutely certain that if they'll work with me, I'll get them it. I'll lead them to discover within themselves that one little piece that they feel is missing. See, the moment you detach yourself from an outcome, like, I've got to, everything's riding on this close. The moment you can detach yourself from an outcome and you anchor in the intention of service, how can I help this person? How can I give this person the information they need in a way that they need it so they feel absolutely certain? Your energy shifts. And as a result of your energy shifting, if you're leading this, if you're the originator, the buyer feels it. And guess what? They want to be led. The true close happens when your buyer borrows your belief long enough for them to say yes, for them to say, you know what? I'm not sure exactly how we're going to get this all done in the backyard. I'm not sure, how we're going to get it done by November before, the community stops all outside vendors from coming in. But I know Jim does. I know this builder knows how to do it. And I'm going to borrow his belief. Look, if anything that I'm saying to you right now is resonating with you, if you find yourself saying, yeah, that makes sense. If you're starting to see just a little bit about what's holding you back, and you know it isn't strategy. It's how you see yourself in the strategy. And what I want to do is I want to give you something. I want you to grab the guide that I've linked for you. It's in the description. It's called the Self-Concept Scoreboard. And it's right there. The link is right there. And it will help you spot the exact belief patterns that run in your own internal sales conversations, not just in the closing, but in the pricing, in the presenting, in the handling of objections, when you're asking for them to make the decision, all of it. You don't need more sales tactics. You need to be doing that which you already need to know. Like you already know what to do. If you've made one sale, then there's no reason why you can't make 100. What you need to do is you need to shift how you see yourself in the process. What leads to failure isn't the lack of knowledge. It's the lack of applying the knowledge you have. And this guide will show you where you are in your identity. Is your identity in alignment and congruent with the belief system you have to have in order to close the deals? And where is there a conflict in the results that you're trying to create? See, once you see that, it becomes like, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you see it, you stop trying to close with pressure. And what you do is you start to lead with presence. Now, once you've got this guide in your hand, I want you to come right back here. And I want you to watch this next video. It's called Secrets to Mastering Cold Calling. But I'll tell you right now, it's not what you think. I'm not teaching you tricks about what to say. I'm showing you how to own this dynamic, how to establish yourself internally as the authority, to accept and believe in yourself as an expert, how to control the energy, how to establish the authority just in those first 4 seconds, and how to remove any resistance before it even shows up. If you've ever felt like, cold calling just isn't for you, or all that is a numbers game, this video will change everything. So go now, grab the guide, and then I'll meet you over there in that video.